Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada, with episode number 154 of the Yakking Show. And we got to tell you, although the sun's shining now, we got, I don't know, about a foot of snow up there, more snow than we've seen for 5 or 6 years, I guess. So great excitement. Lots of other excitement in the land in this part of Canada. But first of all, let's tell you about our show. It's the show for awakening you to new perspectives for the changing world we're living in. And wow, this last week, it's certainly been changing. And with that in mind, we're going to break our habit of 154 episodes. And I'm going to introduce our guest because Kathleen, yes, she always does it way better than I do. But in this particular occasion, it's something close to my heart. And we have a lady as a guest today who has attended the historic events that were unfolding in our capital city, Ottawa, last weekend. And for those of you all over the world who watch our show, we know there's many of you, you probably haven't seen very much of what's happening because it's the full story is not being broadcast or published or viewed or presented on the mainstream media. And it's a shocking disgrace to the profession of journalism. So here we have it straight from the horse's mouth. So having sort of tempted you with what we're going to talk about today, I'll send it back to Kathleen because she does introduce guests better than me. Over to you, girl.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you all so very much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate you. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And we love reading your comments, by the way, so please keep those coming. We so appreciate them. And as Peter mentioned, we do have our special guest with us. Her name is Charlene Longlade. Charlene, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Now, Charlene, just to give our audience a little bit about your background, you're a self-employed tax preparer and a local realtor for Oxford County. But can you tell our audience a little bit more about yourself and what led you to become so passionate about this particular movement that we're going to talk about today?
Right. So I'm originally from the Windsor area and I moved to Ingersoll in 2004. And it's funny because when I was younger, I had friends that would say that they would come down to the Delhi area and or Tilsonburg and pick tobacco as teenagers, right? And so they would come back to Windsor with their great stories about how kind people were and how welcoming they were. And I was like, man, I would really like to be a part of that kind of community. And so lo and behold, I go to college. I met my ex-husband there and he was from this area. So we moved here. And so I really cherish that type of Canadian values. And it's always been something that I've strived to uphold in my household and in my business as well. And it's been great. Ingersoll has been a fantastic place to work, and the clients that I have are just fantastic as far as the support that I've been given and just the kindness and welcome that I receive from people, even though I'm not from this area. So it's been really good.
Excellent.
Excellent. And as a newcomer to this area myself, having been here just on 18 years, I echo what you're saying. I found people so friendly and welcoming, and I'm really happy to be here too. So, Charlene, now, as I said in my little preamble, the rest of the world doesn't really know the full story of what's happening. So you went off to Ottawa last Friday, I think it was, and saw the convoy rolling in. And again, bit of history, there were hundreds of thousands of Canadians on the highway bridges, freeway bridges, all the way down to Ottawa. I myself was out there, and for an African, this was tough. I mean, there we were, -6, and the wind howling and snow coming down, but we stuck it out to wave to those trucks. So tell our audience what you felt, what you saw. Give us the whole story of your weekend in Ottawa.
Right. So yes, speaking of the weather, it was freezing cold. It was, I think, -30 at some point.
Oh,
so yes, it was really cold, but the sun was shining, the clouds were nice, and there was nothing. There was just blue sky. It was fantastic. And everyone was welcoming. Everyone had the same sort of perspective. They were very courteous. We knew that there was a lot of people in the crowd, and we all just kind of helped each other through getting through where we needed to go and everything like that. We were met with a little bit of resistance there was a lot of shops that were closed. There was a lot of restaurants that were closed, which is too bad because Ottawa does rely a lot on their tourist industry. So if they had had their businesses open, I'm sure that they would have really been prosperous that weekend. But what they received as far as information ahead of time, I'm not sure. So it's hard to say, whether they were preparing for the worst or not. The mall was open on the Saturday. They closed it on the Sunday. And the people that went through the mall, they didn't wear their masks. And, we went through the food court and they had barricades up. They had taken away the chairs. And so we went in, we bought food, and we moved the barricades out of the way and ate. And at one point, while we were eating our lunch, we actually busted out and sang the Canadian anthem. So that was beautiful to be a part of that. We all had the same perspective, right? We love our country. We love our freedom. Having been born in Canada, I don't know what it's like to come from like a war-torn country where you don't have the extent of freedom that we have here. And that the family values and the different diversity in our culture is really important for us to keep that going, right? For generations to come, not just for us, right?
Sure. I'm going to jump in there because a little bit. Charlene and I, for the sake of the record, Charlene and I are all involved in another organization also fighting for freedom. So we've had a few chats in the past. We know one another. But for those who don't know, I came from Zimbabwe, which was an example of a government getting out of control, abandoning the rule of law, and for political purposes, totally destroying the economy of the country, and in the process taking away all the commercial farms. And I ended up in a police cell because the government took my farm and I refused to give in. So I know what it's like to come from a country with no rules. And that's why I'm so passionate as a new Canadian, supporting people like Charlene who are trying to ensure that our constitution stays intact and our freedoms stay intact. So sorry to jump in there, but I just wanted to give our viewers that perspective of someone. And I've spoken to many people from Poland and Eastern Europe who feel exactly the same as I do and as you do, that we need to protect this country because it's so special. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt you. Carry on, Charlene.
No, I think that's great. Yeah.
So Charlene, were you right at Parliament Hill?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. We stayed at a hotel down by the airport, drove our own vehicle, and just kind of got around the crowd there, and were able to park, which is one of the worries, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we went right down to Parliament Hill. They had a crane that was set up at one of the intersections where people got on a mic and spoke. There was people all over the grounds of Parliament Hill. They had some politicians show up. Maxime Bernier was there speaking at Confederation Park. And then there was also Indigenous people that had set up their tents and were doing ceremonies. I missed that. I think that started after we left. So whether it be on the Sunday or the Monday, I'm not sure. I would have loved to have seen that though. But yeah, as far as people were concerned, there was, I don't even know a number to put it, to be honest with you. But there was no incidences, right? So at the end of the night on Saturday, the police chief did get on the television and spoke locally and said, there was not one incident. So to get probably hundreds of thousands, I would think, even if not more, together and not have one incident, that's fantastic.
What a difference in how it's been reported on the mainstream media, though. I mean, really, it was polar opposites to what actually happened, because you were right there. And although you couldn't possibly see everything that was going on, there might have been a couple little incidences here and there which the mainstream media focused on. the general atmosphere of this event was one of true unity and love and respect
Yeah,
and joy.
it really was.
It wasn't that from the videos that I've seen of I mean, you can probably report better than I can on that, but it just sounded like a joyous event.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think something that the media portrayed in a bad light is the stories of people taking food from the homeless, and we know that that's not true. But tell our audience a little more about what you saw was food, people handing out food to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
There was food everywhere. I mean, there was trucks that had food out front, and then they had set up booths and stuff like that. So there was tons of food coming in, and more was coming even after we had left, right? So yeah, I can't really see. The type of people that were there are like hardworking, humble, family-oriented people that, you know what, they have their own money. They wouldn't need to steal from a homeless shelter. It doesn't even make sense, right?
No.
So I did go through my pictures, and I was kind of looking to see, because one of the other accusations was that there were swastikas around. So I looked through my pictures, and I did find there was one flag that had a swastika on it with French language, so I'm not sure what it was saying, and it was only part of the flag that I got in my picture. However, that was at the very beginning of when we first arrived there, and I don't remember seeing it any other time. There was some graffiti that was done, and the graffiti was done on the business windows. So I wish at the time I would have thought of going over to see, like, hey, is that actually spray paint, or is that just chalk, you know, like just to see, or clean it up or whatever. I didn't think of that at the time. But so it, you know, it kind of just makes me question. And even the gentleman that they had in the audience with the Confederation flag, the true Canadian stood up and said, hey, you know what, you're not welcome here. Like, this isn't what it's all about. We're all about, you know, peace and love and unity. This is not what we're standing for. And he walked away with that little bit of a confrontation. So that's good, you know, like people were keeping up with it. They were, you know, picking up garbage. They were cleaning off the graffiti. And then, you know, the incidents that they talked about with the Terry Fox statue.
Right.
You know, putting a flag on the Terry Fox statue is not the first time that that's happened. You know, if that's the worst that can happen, we've seen what's happened around the world with other statues. And I think that it was really a symbolism of respect for our country.
Yes,
absolutely. But again, the mainstream media choose to make an issue of that and ignore some of the other flags that are more objectionable to many of us that have been put on the Terry Fox statue, and totally ignore or celebrate demonstrators breaking statues of previous former prime ministers down and doing obscene things to their heads. I mean, it's just so one-sided. It's unbelievable. Charlene, did you get to talk to anyone who'd actually driven their trucks down there?
Just a really quick hi, because when they were arriving at the time, they were really blowing their horns, right? So they had instructions to like blow their horns every half hour for about 10 minutes. So it was really hard to get in between. You know, they had their mission going on too. And I believe that they were respectful in the evenings, that they didn't blow their horns. And, you know, there was a lot of police around and things like that to kind of keep that under control, right? So not only were there trucks, but then tractors ended up showing up as well. And, you know, people in their SUVs or their RVs and things like that as well. So, you know, there was a lot of vehicles. However, if need be, the police could still get through, an ambulance, a fire truck, that kind of a thing. They weren't out to block the city so that, you know, you put people in harm's way.
Sure.
That was not their intention.
Yeah. But with pictures we saw, many of those streets had trucks 3 abreast, only leaving 1 lane for emergency vehicles. So it effectively closed the city down, correct?
Right.
Yeah. And for our audience, when we say trucks, we mean trucks, not pickups, not little 3-tonners. We mean big trucks,
Big trucks.
which are called tractors here, called horses in Europe, the ones that pull very big trailers behind them. And some had those trailers with a huge a range of original signs on them. We won't get into some of the more obscene ones, but some of them that we've seen were really amusing, right?
Yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit about the police presence. There were no issues with the officers either, were there?
No, there wasn't. They were very cooperative. I did hear like on reports that they were helping to hand out food and that they, got out of the way to help the trucks pull in to where they needed to be. There was our CMP there and police from all over. So, but they kind of basically were in their group and they observed and kept the crowd under control. There wasn't really anything that they needed to do. So they were involved just as much as everybody else as far as, but yes, they had their job to do, but at the same time, they weren't getting in the way of stopping people from protesting.
Right. Now, you mentioned that the restaurants, most of them, I guess, were closed. Did any decide to just open up for business?
Well, I hope that they've changed their mind about that kind of thing. I'm not sure, like I said before, I don't know what they were told as far as what to prepare for. But the crowd that this is bringing in is not people that want to vandalize, is not people that want to put harm on anyone. It's all about the love and the unity and things like that. So my hope is that they do start to open because, the restaurants are needed. Washroom facilities are not, there's nothing available. So when it came time for us to have to do that, we had to get out of the area in order to do that. So, that makes it a little bit tough. You don't want people littering. You don't want people taking advantage of that situation either. So,
right.
Yeah.
Are you planning on going back this weekend?
Not this weekend, but next weekend, if it's still going on, I think that, I might actually do that. It's a very good cause. It's something that's definitely needed. I think in our country as well, we've never had a situation before where, we're starting to question whether the government has our best interest at heart. And, up until this point, it was like, okay, well, the government's doing what they can for us. They work for us. They do the best that they can for us. But then in this situation, it's just gotten out of hand and we've let other people decide for us when maybe we should start to take that control back, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So from what you heard on the ground, and our weeks gone by and we've all been catching up with the news on alternate channels, my view is that these truckers and the organizers are determined to stay there until this change. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, for sure. They have put out some press conferences where they said, it started out as the truckers' vaccine mandate, but it's grown into something so much more. And it's had an impact worldwide as well, where other countries are now finally starting to come together. So it's made a big impact because you just can't roll in on a big, 18-wheeler and be quiet,
That's right.
They're definitely making an impact. And, I've seen some of the residents out. You can tell that they're residents because they're jogging, they're skating on the canal, they're doing their thing. They're still able to get around. Yes, they may have to put up with some of the noise. I get that. I understand that. But at the same time, they came to make a statement that enough is enough. And, we've been kind of complacent a little bit. We've been cooperative. We wanted to do what was best for our country. We wanted to do what was best for our neighbor. And but 2 years later, and where does it go from there?
Right.
You know,
Right.
like if you give up your freedom for your own body autonomy,
Mhm.
then, you know, we're no different than the other countries that may have had issues with control, you know, with an
Exactly.
overbearing government. Yeah.
And personally, my
Absolutely.
fear is this whole vaccine passport. Where does that end, right? We bring that in. Show me your paper society, right? Where does that? This is just the beginning. If this takes hold, I don't know.
Yeah, then we're in real trouble. But it started a momentum. I've got to throw in for our audience that I was listening to the CB channel of the Trucker Convoy on Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember. And there was a guy from England, and he sounded like he had tears in his eyes because he was so emotional. And he said, this is the biggest global event. It's caused more global excitement than anything since Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon in 1968. Now, many people were not around then, but certainly I was, and I remember that. But to me, it's on a parallel with the Berlin Wall being broken down. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1980, whatever, I sat up listening to CNN later. I used to listen to CNN in those days because they did their job and were decent journalists, well, we thought. And I watched that Berlin Wall coming down. And this is on a parallel to me. This is similar to that. And as you said earlier, Charlene, there's convoys starting all over the world. It's an ideal mechanism, a good platform. The Australians are going well, and we have a whole lot more this weekend all over Canada too. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Excuse me. And I think it's having some success. We've seen several things happen in Canada over the course of the week. The opposition, the leader of the opposition in Parliament has lost his job. He's been booted out. One province has said they're removing more or less all mandates from the end of February. Alberta now saying they'll remove most of theirs at a similar time. And I think the narrative is crumbling, quite honestly. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that the virus and the everything that's gone on around it was kind of a catalyst for us to recognize that these systems that have been in place have been crumbling for quite some time. And they do need to be revamped. They need to, you know, certain people need to step down and step aside while others that can come in with integrity, you know, with transparency, can start to build back the country in a better way. That's not so, yeah. I was just really blown away by Trudeau's speech and and how divided he's trying to create the country and the people, and that is just not Canadian at all.
And it's not leadership either of
No.
any, you know, compare that to a Churchill in World War II, for instance. You know, that's not what leaders do. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. So interesting time. So you're not going this weekend, but probably the next, and I'm sure they'll be there. But there are many people going this weekend, many people on the road today, Friday. I was looking at something on Telegram. Somebody's organized a 50-seater bus, and it's going there, leaving Toronto at 6:30 tomorrow morning, coming back to say tomorrow evening, and it's $50 donation. But they'll even take people who can't afford the $50. They're so keen to get more people down there. So, and that's just one, and I've heard of many more people going down. Yeah. So, Charlene and I were at a meeting the other day where another couple that we know were down, and Ray related the story of a lady coming up behind him with this huge, like a Dagwood, what would you call it, a burger or a roll, you know, those long. And she said, do you want one? He said, no, I'm full, I've been given so much food. She said, well, I'm going to put it in your backpack, you know, you can eat it later. And he showed us a photograph of this thing, like a foot long roll full of food, and she just gave it to him, put it in his backpack. And from what you're saying, Charlene, that was the spirit and the camaraderie that was occurring down there in Ottawa, right?
Yes. And we haven't seen that for a really long time, right?
No.
With the mandates of the staying at home, the lockdowns, the 6 feet apart, the masks, and so on and so forth. My hope is that this will actually, spark something inside of us and go, well, yeah, this is the Canadians that I know. This is the unity that we have a uniqueness about us, like we're different from the United States. We're a free country and we want to keep it that way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
just, the way that they help each other out and they're welcoming and everybody's in the same boat. It's not like, one is better than the other, even though there's different cultures that were involved.
Mhm.
There was different ethnic groups down there with different
Sure.
flags, but they were the minority. For the most part, it was, the native, there's Native Canadians and Caucasian Canadians were for the most part. But yeah, we need to get back to that unity, right? Because I think that if we stand together, then we should be able to have some success with this.
Yes.
Right, absolutely.
Right.
I got to throw in a personal one for our audience quick, and I've told both of you ladies about it. But I've been here 18 years, and up until last Saturday, I still felt a little bit of a foreigner in this country because, I still got to get used to driving on the wrong side of the road and terminology, particularly for things to do with cars or autos. I still want to call it a bonnet, not a hood. And you know what?
Not the wrong side, the right side.
Well, we can argue about that later. But at least we played a man's sport called rugby with where we didn't wear any protective gear and we stayed on the field for the whole 90 minutes at a time. And the Canadian girls were some of the best women rugby players in the world, incidentally. Anyway, that's not what I was going to talk about. But so I've felt still a little bit of a foreigner, although I've been really happy and welcomed. It's nice not to have people shooting at you. But on that bridge, on the road to a little village called Drumbo, there were about 1,000 odd people on Saturday watching the convoy going through. And I'm standing there, and it's cold, but I was okay. And a lady comes along in a pickup with her husband's driving, and she gets out and she gives us one of those square boxes of Tim Hortons donuts. I think they have 12 donuts. And for those in the rest of the world, if you haven't heard about Tim Hortons, it's an iconic Canadian institution, the most memorable thing. So she gives us a box of donuts, and we said, no, that's for you. No. There was a whole lot of kids. We gave them to kids, and in her car, she must have had 10 more boxes of donuts. And those things, I don't know, what's a box of donuts? 12, 15 bucks or thereabouts. And she was just stopping along the crowd, handing these out, and also flasks of coffee, just giving them out to people. And I thought, wow. And for the first time in my 18 years, I knew what it was like to be a Canadian. So that's how deeply, and I phoned Charlene and I'm getting emotional again. She'll remember the conversation, but it had that much impact on me. And the same with all the people around me. It was something absolutely wonderful. And that was just a little part on the side of the road. That wasn't even what you experienced in Ottawa. So I believe this is a wave that's gone through our country and going to go around the world for the good. I really do. That's enough for me. No speech making here. Back to you. Kathleen, have you got any more?
Well, I think we're running low on time.
We're running low on time.
I just wanted to ask Charlene, if people want to contact you for your tax business, how do people connect with you?
So I think that you have a copy of my website there, charlenelonglade.net, and through Century 21 at century21heritagehouse.ca is the other for the realtor. But yeah.
Okay,
yes.
And for those who are listening to this as an audio podcast, if you look at the description on whatever platform you're listening to it on, Charlene's contact details will be in that description. There you go.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Charlene, for tuning in, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in again. And if any of you if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And until next time, take care and bye-bye, everyone.
Hey, goodbye.